Manipulating what we hear is easier than you might think.
And has so many potential uses.
Generally, an audience will accept what they are listening to without analysing it.
Even if the content is an impossible situation.
So enjoy the creative freedom.
Now, all of those were my own voice. It took me about 15 minutes to record it, stick it on my computer, and edit it. They were all very, very simple edits. The techniques that I use after years, and this is one of the interesting things, after years and years and years of working with sound and manipulating sound, I've realized that the best techniques for manipulating sound are ones that people have been using for 50 years. The traditional old methods of speeding up and slowing down a tape are basically the most effective things as far as sound manipulation. Raising and lowering pitch. Any of the gentlemen in the audience here, I can turn your voice into making you sound like you're a child or female. Same with the females. You pitch a female voice down enough and it will sound male. You pitch it down even further and it'll sound like Jabba the Hutt. And it is it is one of the most simple things of pitch, time, and volume are the three tools I use, and they are the easiest things to manipulate, and any sort of software, and there's plenty of free software out there, the sorts of things you can do, and I'll get to some other examples in a second. You can make very, very interesting sounds out of very, very mundane sounds just by playing with pitch and volume. So, and again, manipulating what we hear also manipulates what we think. You know, in those particular instances, I mean, some of them are a little bit obviously treated, but quite often if I'm doing something on a low budget, I'll just record my own voice and then pitch shift it down 2 semitones because I don't like the sound of my own voice that much, and then it just shifts it down to makes it sound like a guy who's sort of 6'4" rather than 5'6". So this, I'm just going to show you a very quick snippet of a program that I use. So first of all, here's a selection of sound files, and we're going to use just the ones called Blackbird, and there are in fact 10 sound files there. So we will be using 10 short sound files, and I'll play some of them for you in a second. And just to show you, each sound file is only about 268 kilobytes. This is about the size of a standard text email. So collectively, we have a look at all of them, and the collective size of them, that's not 250 megabytes, that's 2.5 megabytes for just 10 small sound files. And as I say here, implementation is the trick. Now, just for reference, those sound files are all at 48 kilohertz, 24-bit, which is quite high. Like, that's DVD quality sound. So the implementation is the trick, and in this particular case, the implementation is going to be in this program called FMOD. So that's what you get. Maybe 2 seconds worth of sound file. However, using FMOD, which combines all of these in a particular way and uses those properties over there, it can then combine these in such a way that what we end up with is an ambience that we've created. Of birds in a tree. Now, there's a couple of things where this is significant. So I'll just wait for this to finish. All right, now this process is called generative sound design. There's a couple of reasons why this is significant. From the point of view of being a games developer, one of the biggest challenges with working with games is the resources available. With games, etc., we have to worry about things like memory, because an Xbox or a PlayStation has a limited amount of memory like your computer does. So when we're trying to get all the assets for the game in, we actually have to look at how much memory we have to play around with. Now, I'm assuming that nobody here is somebody who generally deals with audio, but I will give you an example that if we wanted to make the sound for a film of an ambience of birds in a tree, and we wanted it to last for, say, a minute long, you know, at 44 kilohertz, etc., etc., what we would be looking at in a stereo, if we wanted a nice sort of stereo sound to go in the film and we had a minute long of those birds, it would probably be somewhere around somewhere between 50 and 100 megabytes. This particular process, which has used those 10 sound files, which, as I pointed out, was 2.5 megabytes, not only is it creating the sound of an ambience, but because of the method that it's doing, it is generating this end result in real time. This means a couple of things. One, it means that the sound is constantly changing because it is randomly grabbing one of those sounds. It randomly applies a little bit of pitch shifting to it and a little bit of volume. So, the bird might sound a little bit of higher squeak or a lower squeak. And then it randomly waits a period of time and then it randomly pulls another sound out and does the same thing. It will do this forever. Once you press play, it will keep going forever. And the way the FMOD is set up, it will do it up to 7.1 surround sound. And in fact, if they bring out technology to do higher than that, FMOD will just allow as many surround sound channels as you want. So this is creating, from 10 mono sound effects, you can create a surround sound ambience that never loops, never repeats, and generates in real time forever. Now, from the point of view of if you're working on a linear thing, like a documentary or film or television, if you actually had to assemble that yourself, I've talked to people who work in television and on Pro Tools and stuff like that, and I said you had to build something out of little mono sounds. It's a sort of thing that would take them several hours to do. That takes me about 10 minutes to do. The other thing is because it's able to create this environment out of mono sounds, you could give me a BBC recording from the 1950s of a jungle where none of the creatures exist anymore, and I could cut it up and clean it up and probably create a full surround sound environment out of a mono sound file. Now, one of the things is that most of the world doesn't actually know about this. Nobody's doing this. I occasionally jump up and down and say, hey, there's this technology, you can do this. And they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll keep using it. So from the point of view of game development, it's very important because it allows us to remove repetition, which is the bane of game development, where you just get this little sound going tweet, 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 driving everybody crazy. But the other thing is that it allows you to create very, very alive environments using small numbers of resources. So each one of those sounds were created using this methodology. So what this means is that if I'm working on a game project where, for instance, there may be an explosion, I use a selection of smaller components that you would normally use in an audio editing program and you'd combine them to make an explosion. I don't do that. I get these small components and I put them into this program called FMOD, which means that in the game, for instance, every single time an explosion is triggered, it is unique. You will never hear exactly the same sound twice. So from the point of view of having a more realistic experience, the user won't necessarily pick up that the sound is unique every time. They'll just feel that it's more realistic. And this is actually one of the disappointing parts of doing sound and audio work, is that when you've got really, really, really awesome sound and audio, most people don't notice it at all. Because the more realistic it is, the more they just switch off from it and just enjoy the experience. So it's one of those things of like, the better job you do, the less likely you are to be noticed. So let's have a look at some of the other things with sound. Now, before I go on, I actually can't even remember what that sound is. It sounds like somebody hitting a letterbox. I've not actually done that, so it's not that. I'm pretty sure I recorded that on a farm somewhere where there was a lot of junk lying around, and I think it might have been one of those old metal biscuit tins, the sort of the old rusty square ones. I think I probably tormented that for a little while, kicked it around and recorded some sounds. So that is the sound that we are playing with here, all right? So the next 3 or 4 examples are all just manipulating that one single sound. So it's a fairly average sound. It's not anything that's particularly exciting that we would use in a movie, etc. Or is it? Our box got bigger. And bigger again. And now somebody's trying to get through the hull of the ship.